The patent lawyer did not ask for the founder. At my son-in-law's product launch dinner, she held up the steel coupling. Everyone had applauded and said, "Is Calvin Rusk in this room?" Brent's smile stayed fixed, but his hand closed around the podium. He had introduced me as Naomi's retired dad, who carries his career in a rusty toolbox. The room laughed. What he did not know was that one prototype was missing from that box. His new invention carried a flaw only its maker would recognize. And the acquisition lawyer had found a name he thought was buried. My daughter sat beside him with a sole inventor certification, awaiting her signature. Before dinner ended, she would choose between the company holding her savings and the truth holding our family together. If someone mocked your only proof, would you confront them or let the evidence speak? Tell me below. And subscribe for stories where quiet work finally receives its name. The toolbox had been green once. 40 years of oil and hot metal had darkened it, almost black. A dent near the handle came from the day my father dropped it, while teaching me that machinists measure twice because trust is expensive. Inside were micrometers, punches, a brass screwdriver, and a false tray opened by pressing the left hinge. Brent Maddox saw rust. I saw a record of every honest thing my hands had made. I was 68 and lived in the Dayton brick house, where Teresa and I raised Naomi. My right shoulder no longer lifted cleanly. Hearing in my left ear had faded around presses and grinders. 3 mornings a week, I repaired tools for neighbors. Brent called it garage money. Before retirement, I spent 32 years at Ellison Lift Systems. Ending as supervisor of precision safety development, I never used inventor at family dinners. In factories, inventions arrive as a worker, asking why a machine kicks backward and months of stubborn tolerances. In 2015, after a torque wrench spun free and shattered a technician's wrist, I began developing a compact anti-kickback coupling. The mechanism released load in 3 controlled clicks instead of 1 violent snap. The third prototype worked. I stamped it C.R. -3 beneath the collar, documented every revision, and filed through a small patent firm called Bellwether and Price. The patent was granted years later and assigned to Rusk Safety Designs, a company Teresa and I owned. We licensed the mechanism for industrial lifting equipment, but kept the consumer hand tool field. The royalties were steady, not spectacular. They paid Teresa's final medical bills, kept the mortgage clear, and funded an education account for Naomi. I lived modestly because I liked my house, and because money earned from a safety device never felt like a reason to become loud. Naomi knew I had a couple of patents. She did not know the licensing terms or that the consumer rights remained mine. When she was young, she had watched me turn sketches into metal. As an adult, she became a mechanical engineer with a gift for translating rough concepts into clean digital models. Brent met her at an engineering conference in Columbus. He was not an engineer. He was what investors called a product visionary, quick on a stage, fluent in markets, and confident enough to make uncertainty sound outdated. He praised Naomi's intelligence in public. In private, he corrected her explanations until her ideas emerged wearing his vocabulary. 5 years into their marriage, he founded Maddox Forge, a consumer tool startup. Naomi invested $80,000. Teresa had left her and became chief technical officer. Brent supplied the pitch. Naomi supplied most of what could survive contact with metal. At first, I was proud of them. Their workshop occupied a converted warehouse by the river. Brent gave tours in white sneakers that never touched cutting fluid. Naomi stayed after midnight correcting drawings. He had promised investors would be ready by morning. When I asked if her equity matched her work, she said, "Husbands and wives did not keep score. Companies do." I told her. She smiled without answering. 3 objects from those years would matter later. The first was a dog-eared black notebook in the false tray of my toolbox. Its pages held dated drawings of the 3-click coupling, witnessed by my old foreman, Lionel Ames. The second was Prototype 3 itself, a palm-sized steel cylinder with an asymmetrical relief notch I had cut by hand after the second prototype overheated. The notch was ugly, but necessary. Production versions used a cleaner curve. The third was a small silver flash drive Teresa had labeled Calvin Keep the Boring Things. It held patent correspondence, lab photographs, maintenance fee receipts, and a video of the original load test. I kept paper and drives separate from the patent office's public records because public records identify a right. They do not always preserve the human path that created it. 6 months before the launch dinner, Naomi visited my garage with a portable scanner from Maddox Forge. She said the company was building a digital family archive. Brent thinks your old tools would make good background for our origin story, she said. I let her scan the toolbox exterior and several harmless fixtures. When she lifted prototype 3, I put my hand over it. Not this one. Why? Because it is still covered. She understood the word covered the way engineers do. By the patent, and by a promise I made to myself. She returned it to the tray. I thought that ended the matter. 2 months later, Maddox Forge announced a revolutionary hand tool called the Safe Turn 1. Brent claimed it would prevent recoil injuries with a proprietary staged release core. The promotional rendering showed only the outside housing. Naomi stopped sending me design updates. Then she invited me to a family dinner at their house. Bring the old toolbox, she said. Brent wants to photograph it for the launch display. Her voice held the careful brightness she used when asking for something she had already argued about. I placed the toolbox in the bed of my pickup and drove across town. I did not know Brent had promised investors the invention was his, or that a technical origin certification supporting his sole inventor claim waited in Naomi's office. I only knew my daughter had asked me to bring the record of my working life into a house where her husband treated records as decoration. Brent had invited more than family. 2 board members sat at the dining table beside his parents. A photographer moved between the kitchen and the living room. On a sideboard stood a foam presentation model of the Safe Turn 1 under a black cloth. I set my toolbox beside my chair. Brent glanced down at it. You actually brought the whole thing. Naomi asked me to. Perfect. Authenticity. He said the word the way a decorator might say exposed brick. Dinner began with wine and a speech about Maddox Forge's coming acquisition by Hartwell Industrial. Brent said the deal would bring American toolmaking back to ordinary garages. Naomi sat to his left, turning her wedding band around her finger. One board member asked how the safe turn mechanism had begun. Brent rested an arm across Naomi's chair. I grew up watching my father-in-law refuse to replace anything. Calvin believes every problem can be solved with a file and a tool older than he is. The table laughed politely. He nudged my toolbox with his shoe. That box is basically his retirement portfolio. Another laugh. Naomi said, Dad did precision safety work for decades. Brent raised both hands. And we honor that. But there is a difference between old shop intuition and scalable invention. I felt heat rise along my collar. What hurt was not the insult. Men like Brent had mocked dirty hands in clean conference rooms throughout my career. What hurt was Naomi lowering her eyes. Show them the inside. Brent said, No. The room settled. He smiled. Come on. Calvin, we are building a heritage display. Nobody is stealing your screwdrivers. The exterior is enough. He lifted his glass. Trade secrets from the Eisenhower administration. This time Naomi did not defend me. After dessert, Brent removed the cloth from the safe turn display. The prototype housing was blue anodized aluminum, sleek enough for a store shelf. He asked a board member to lock a socket onto the demonstration shaft, then overloaded it. Click, click, click. The handle released without snapping backward. Every conversation I had been avoiding stopped inside me. 3 controlled releases could be achieved in several ways. But Brent's device hesitated half a beat before the 3rd click. Prototype 3 had done the same thing because of the hand-cut relief notch. I had corrected that delay in the production drawings. Anyone working from the patent would have seen the correction. Anyone copying the physical prototype would copy the hesitation. Run it again, I said. Brent looked pleased. Interested now. Run it under a lower load. Naomi's head lifted. Brent repeated the demonstration. At lower load, the third release dragged. That needs to be recalled before launch. I said. His smile vanished. You have seen one demo. I have heard that timing before. He turned to the table. This is what happens when craftsmen confuse familiarity with ownership, Naomi whispered. I or Brent? No. We should clear this up. Calvin, your toolbox inspired the visual campaign. It did not invent SafeTurn. Who did? I did. The lie was delivered without hesitation. I looked at Naomi. Did you certify his sole inventor claim? Her face answered first. Brent pushed back his chair. This is a family dinner, not a deposition. Then answer as family. He opened my toolbox before I could reach it. My shoulder caught when I stood, and that 1 second was enough. He lifted the top tray, held up an old wrench, and grinned at the photographer. Behold the secret laboratory. The camera flashed. I closed the lid beneath his hand. Do not open my box again. His parents looked offended on his behalf. One board member studied the table. Brent leaned close. You are embarrassing Naomi because you cannot stand that we built something bigger than your garage. Naomi stood. Everybody needs to stop. Did you scan prototype 3? I asked her. She went pale. Brent answered for her. We scanned dozens of obsolete objects. Inspiration is not infringement. He should not have known what I called it. I had never said prototype 3 in his presence. Naomi heard it too. Her hand stopped turning the ring. I latched the toolbox and left without another word. In the driveway, she caught my sleeve. Dad, please don't do anything until I can explain. Was the prototype scanned? I did not authorize it. That is not what I asked. She looked toward the dining room windows. Brent stood behind the glass. Watching. Yes, she said. But I thought it was for reference. Where is the scan? On the company server. And the declaration, not signed. Keep it that way. She grabbed my arm. If the deal fails, I lose Teresa's money. 23 employees lose their jobs. Brent says the mechanism is different enough. Did an independent patent lawyer say that? She did not answer. At home, I carried the toolbox to my workbench and pressed the left hinge. The false tray rose. The notebook and silver drive were there. Prototype 3 was not. The missing prototype left a clean oval in the oilcloth. I did not call Brent. Anger would warn him and give him a new story to tell about an unstable old man. I photographed the tray, the latch, and the dust line where the steel cylinder had rested. Then I checked the camera above my garage door. The footage showed Brent entering 3 weeks earlier with Naomi's spare key. He carried a long cardboard box and left 7 minutes later with something small wrapped in a shop rag. His face was clear. The object was not. The video proved access and concealment, not what he took. I called Naomi. Did you give Brent my garage key? Silence. He said he needed a torque gauge you offered us. I offered you a gauge. I did not offer him entry. I'm sorry. Sorry comes after truth. Did he bring back a steel cylinder? Her breathing changed. I saw on his desk. He said it came from a surplus supplier. The underside would be stamped C. R. Fusan. I never looked. Look now. If you can do it without taking or altering anything, photograph only what you are authorized to see. You sound like this is a case. It becomes a case when someone files a lie. An hour later, Naomi saw no photograph. She sent a screenshot from the company's product data system. The SafeTurn design history began with a file named CR3, raw, scan. Its creation date matched Brent's garage visit. The upload account belonged to Brent. Naomi had access because she was chief technical officer. The next entry was CR3, clean, remove, marks. The third was staged, release, core, BM. BM meant Brent Maddox. Metadata can suggest a path, but file names alone do not establish inventorship. I asked Naomi to preserve the audit export through the company's ordinary compliance function, She said Brent controlled compliance. Then use the board's ethics address. I said, if I do that, he'll know it was me. Yes. She ended the call. I sat in the garage until the motion light shut off. My instinct was to protect her from the consequence of speaking. That instinct had helped create the problem. Naomi had invested her money, labor, and marriage in a company where truth required permission from the person benefiting from its absence. The next morning, I searched the public patent database. Maddox Forge had filed a provisional application 11 months earlier and a non-provisional application 6 weeks ago for a stage-release hand tool coupling. Brent was named sole inventor. The application itself was not yet public. But a Hartwell acquisition notice referenced its title. My own patent covered the same essential sequence and remained active in the consumer field. I called Bellwether and Price. The receptionist transferred me to Evelyn Price. Daughter of the lawyer who had filed my original application, Evelyn had managed the maintenance calendar since her father retired. Calvin, she said, I was going to call you. Hartwell Industrial's patent counsel had contacted her during due diligence. Maddox Forge's lawyers had disclosed my patent as background art and claimed SafeTurn used an independently developed improvement. Did they request a license? I asked. No. They attached a statement saying the original inventor had abandoned commercial development. I did not. I know. Evelyn asked whether anyone had accessed my prototype or files. I sent her the garage footage, photographs of the empty tray, and Naomi's screenshot only after Naomi emailed written permission to share it. Evelyn warned me that copying a physical object did not automatically decide every patent question. Claims had to be compared carefully. Inventorship and infringement were related but distinct. Good. I said, I don't want a bigger truth than we can prove. She arranged an independent examination of a publicly demonstrated SafeTurn unit once it became available through Hartwell's testing lab. Until then, she advised me to send a preservation notice. Nota publique accusation. Naomi came to my house that evening. She looked as if she had not slept. I sent the audit request to the board. She said, what happened? Brent removed my server access. She placed a printed technical origin certification on my workbench. It stated that company records supported Brent as sole inventor. A sticky note read, Naomi sign before Thursday dinner. No last-minute ethics. He cannot make you witness inventorship you know is false. He says, I only know you made something similar. What do you know? She looked at the empty shape in the toolbox. I know I scanned the exterior after you said no to the prototype. I know he later told me he had found a way to scan it anyway. I knew that should have stopped me. But it didn't. Tears rose in her eyes. I did not rescue her from the sentence. No, she said. I wanted the company to work. That admission mattered more than an apology. She had not designed the theft, but ambition and fear had purchased her silence. I asked what she wanted now. I want to correct the record without destroying everyone who works there. Those may not be choices you can perfectly separate. She nodded. Then I want to stop signing things that make the separation somebody else's problem. Evelyn's preservation letter went out that night to Maddox Forge, its board, and Hartwell's counsel. It identified my patent, the missing prototype, and the relevant data categories without accusing anyone of a crime. Brent replied within 12 minutes. His email called my patent an elderly machinist's expired concept. It was neither expired nor merely a concept. More important, he attached a photograph intended to prove SafeTurn's independent development. On the bench behind his new blue housing sat Prototype 3. The C.R.-3 stamp was visible. Evelyn said the photograph confirmed possession but did not prove every patent claim or inventor. We need the test unit, the file history, and truthful testimony, she said. Truthful testimony meant Naomi. Brent came to my garage without calling. I left the door open and stayed near the workbench. You sent lawyers after your own daughter's company? He said. I sent a preservation notice. Same threat in old man language. He placed Prototype 3 on the bench. There. Your antique is returned. I did not touch it. Why was it in your lab? Naomi loaned it to me. She says she did not. She says whatever keeps you from withdrawing love. Why did your scan file say, remove marks? His eyes shifted toward the toolbox. We clean scans. That is standard. Why are you named sole inventor? Because I turned a dead industrial idea into a product. Patents reward invention. Not nostalgia. Then the file history will show your independent work. He leaned closer. Naomi opened your box, scanned your things, and approved design reviews. If Hartwell walks, the board blames her too. Her inheritance and career vanish. Protect your daughter or protect paper. There was his plan, braid Naomi's mistake into his defense, until exposing him exposed her. He believed a father would accept theft before letting his daughter face accountability. You should leave. I said, at Thursday's dinner, Hartwell signs the acquisition letter. Stay home. I will restore Naomi's access after the deal closes. And the sole inventor certification, she will sign. If she refuses, then everyone learns whose credentials downloaded your scan. My openly posted garage camera recorded him. Evelyn said local law and context still required review. And better corporate records would be cleaner evidence. After Brent left, I opened the notebook. Lionel Ames had witnessed every critical drawing. Calling the 81-year-old would drag him into a dispute he had not created. Then I remembered a decision from 20 years earlier. An apprentice named Joel had warned me that a supervisor was skipping test steps to meet a shipment date. I solved the mechanical problem quietly but did not document the pressure. Months later, another team repeated the shortcut. A worker was hurt. My silence had preserved a manager's reputation and purchased someone else's pain. I called Lionel. He remembered the drawings. Failed spring. Odd notch. And Teresa photographing the successful test. I'll tell the truth. He said, but make sure that girl tells hers. Naomi arrived after dark. I played no recording. I told her what Brent had said, that he intended to blame her if the acquisition failed. He already sent the board a memo saying I managed all legacy reference materials. Did you? Some. Not the prototype scan. Can you prove the difference? The scanner keeps operator logs. My badge scanned the exterior objects in January. His administrator badge initiated a separate scan in March. The raw file came from that session. Do you still have lawful access? Only to my own personnel and authorship records. The board's outside investigator can obtain the rest. Then give them what you own and identify what to preserve. Do not enter a system after access was removed. If I tell the board everything, will you license the patent to save the employees? I will consider a fair license after the record is corrected and the safety defect is fixed. I will not trade truth for jobs Brent put at risk. And my money? I am sorry. Naomi. She cried at the workbench. I made coffee without changing the answer. Before leaving, Naomi signed a statement for the outside investigator. She admitted scanning items with permission, described my refusal to scan Prototype 3, identified Brent's later possession, and declined to certify Brent's sole inventor claim. The next morning, the board restored her access only for a supervised interview. Hartwell did not cancel the dinner. Its lawyers wanted the conflict addressed before any acquisition decision. Brent s'en a formal invitation. Und a dress code. He had written, please leave the toolbox at home. I read the line twice, then packed the black notebook, silver drive, and returned prototype inside the box. Silence had already bought too much. Thursday's launch dinner was held at the Dayton Engineers Club. In a ballroom lined with portraits of people who had built turbines, brakes, medical pumps, and flight controls. Maddox Forge had placed the Safe Turn 1 beneath a spotlight near the stage. Brent greeted me at the entrance. His eyes dropped to the toolbox. I asked you not to bring that. You asked? Security can check it. They may inspect it in my presence. He waved us through rather than create a scene before Hartwell's executives. Naomi stood beside the demonstration table in a Navy suit. Her company badge was gone. When I asked whether she was all right, she said, I will be when I finish. Evelyn arrived separately with the notebook, drive, and prototype sealed in a documented case. The toolbox beside my chair remained only the visible beginning of the chain. Brent had made his final bet that presentation could outrun verification. During cocktails, he circulated a revised origin story, safe turn. He said, emerged from watching an older generation struggle with outdated tools. My toolbox became a symbol of the problem his genius had solved. He invited me onto the stage for a photograph, let everyone see where we came from. He said, I remained seated. The product demonstration began. At high load, the 3 clicks sounded clean. At the lower setting, the third release dragged exactly as it had at the family dinner. A Hartwell test engineer frowned and wrote something. Brent increased the music before the next cycle. Then he announced that Naomi would sign the final technical origin certification supporting his sole inventor declaration. An assistant placed a folder on the demonstration table. Naomi walked toward it. For one terrible second, I thought fear had won. Brent stepped beside her and covered the microphone with his palm. Sign as witness, he said. If you refuse, the board gets the badge report and your father watches you lose Teresa's money. Naomi looked at him. Did you enter Dad's garage and scan prototype 3? Do not turn a successful product into a family morality play. Answer me. His voice sharpened enough for the front table to hear. I did what founders do. I used what the family had already put in front of me. Now decide whether you are my wife or his frightened little girl. The threat was not a confession to every legal question, but it exposed the bargain he expected her to accept his name on the invention, her signature beneath it, and her shame waiting if she refused. She uncapped the pen, drew a line through the signature block, and wrote, I cannot attest to sole inventorship. Source records are disputed. She signed beneath that statement. The ballroom went silent. Brent moved to block the page from the audience. This is a private marital disagreement, he said. Naomi took the microphone. No. This is an engineering record. I participated in authorized scans of my father's tools. I did not authorize or perform the later scan of his protected prototype. I failed to report what I suspected soon enough. That failure is mine. The claim that Brent independently conceived the full mechanism is not one I can support. She handed the certification to Hartwell's general counsel. That was the point of no return. My daughter had stopped asking truth to spare her. Brent recovered quickly. Naomi is under pressure from her father, who has never understood startups. Calvin owns an old industrial patent. SafeTurn is a consumer innovation built through my leadership and Naomi's engineering. Similar sounds do not make identical inventions. That last sentence was legally reasonable. It was also why the evidence had to be stronger than outrage. Hartwell's test engineer removed the SafeTurn cartridge under the public demonstration protocol. Beside it, with my permission, Evelyn placed prototype 3. The internal spring paths were not exposed to guests, but high-resolution inspection images appeared on a monitor for counsel and technical reviewers. The same asymmetrical relief notch appeared in both, not merely the same concept, the same abandoned geometry, including a 0.7 millimeter offset corrected in my final production drawings. Brent blamed Naomi. She had access to her father's archive. Naomi did not retreat. Then show the operator log. The board's outside investigator entered from the side of the room, carrying a sealed report. Brent had underestimated not only my toolbox, but the audit trail created by his own company. The operator log identified his administrator badge. Revision history showed the raw scan becoming a clean model. The C.R. -3 markings being digitally removed, and the resulting geometry imported into the SafeTurn assembly. An email from Brent instructed a designer, keep the mechanism, lose anything that looks inherited. The investigator had obtained the records through board authority after Naomi's report. Brent turned toward me. You orchestrated this. I did not create your log. He looked to Hartwell's executives. Calvin is a hobbyist with a grudge. His patent is background history, not ownership of our future. That was when a woman at the council table, stood and lifted the steel coupling. "Before we discuss ownership," she said, "is Calvin Rusk in this room?" I raised my hand. The woman introduced herself as Simone Park, Hartwell's outside patent counsel. She did not call me a genius or announce that I owned everything. She asked me to identify myself for the record. Calvin Rusk, retired tool and die supervisor, sole named inventor on the active stage release coupling patent assigned to Rusk Safety Designs. Brent laughed once. He rehearsed that. Simone continued. "Mr. Rusk, do you control Rusk Safety Designs? I hold 60%. 40% is held in a professionally managed trust established by my late wife for Naomi." Naomi turned toward me. I had never told her. The reveal cut both ways. My silence had protected the asset, but it had also denied my daughter information about her own future interest. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Because the trust gave you no present control, and I feared money would distort the life you were building. That was my decision. We will discuss whether it was the right one outside this room." I would not turn secrecy into virtue merely because Brent had done worse. Simone placed a certified patent assignment, maintenance record, and field of use license summary on the screen. The industrial license had never transferred consumer hand tool rights. The patent remained active. Hartwell's due diligence had received a contrary statement from Maddox Forge. "Who supplied that statement?" a board member asked. The outside investigator answered, "Mr. Maddox approved it." Brent gripped the podium. Calvin abandoned the market. We improved a dormant concept. Market inactivity does not transfer patent ownership. Simone said, "Improvement also does not permit false inventorship or use of covered claims without analysis and authorization." She was careful. So was I. The technical comparison did not rely only on the patent. Evelyn presented the black notebook with Lionel's witness signatures. A secure video connection showed Lionel in his rehabilitation community. He identified the pages, the date, and the reason for the odd notch. Calvin cut it by hand after the second unit heated. Lionel said, "We kept that third one as a lesson. The final design did not use that ugly cut." Simone asked the Hartwell engineer about the comparison. "The safe turn model contains the prototype's obsolete notch and offset," he said. "Those features are not required by the public patent drawings and are inconsistent with independent optimization." Then came the silver drive. The original load test video showed me Teresa, Lionel, and prototype 3 years before Maddox Forge existed. File hashes matched the archived copy Bellwether and Price had received during prosecution. Teresa's voice could be heard behind the camera counting the 3 releases. Click, click, click. For the first time that evening, Brent stopped moving. Evidence had answered Origin. It had not yet answered Naomi's role. Brent pointed at her. She brought him the company files. She signed off on the design reviews. "If I am accused, so is she." Naomi stepped forward without a microphone. "I approved housing, materials, and test fixtures. I did not claim to invent the staged release core. I saw enough to ask questions and chose not to because I was afraid of losing my marriage and investment. I have given the board every record I lawfully control. I will accept its decision about my employment." Her voice shook. Her words did not. One board member asked whether she had personally removed the C.R.3 marking. No. The revision log identifies Brent's administrator session and the designer who followed his instruction, but I saw the clean model later and did not report it. The designer, seated near the back, stood. His name was Malik Turner. He said Brent had told him the scan came from a purchase surplus mechanism and that the marks were a previous owner's inventory code. Malik had kept the instruction email because deleting source marks made him uncomfortable. The chain was complete access footage. Possession photograph. Is scan metadata. Revision history. Instruction email. Technical match. Prior records. And witnesses. My identity as inventor explained why the old toolbox mattered. It did not substitute for a single link. Hartwell's chief executive called a recess. The Maddox Forge board met at one side of the ballroom with counsel. Guests remained at their tables, whispering beneath portraits of engineers whose names had survived because records had. Brent came toward Naomi. "Tell them this was your father's misunderstanding," he said. "We can fix the paperwork after closing. You put my mother's money behind a filing you knew was false. Our money, Herr Gift told me, and I multiplied it. You used it to make leaving expensive." He reached for her elbow. She stepped back before he touched her. "Do not." Security moved closer. Brent looked at me. "You are enjoying this." I looked at Teresa's label on the silver drive. "No. I am watching my daughter pay for a truth you made costly." The board chair returned to the podium. Maddox Forge placed Brent on immediate administrative leave, suspended all representations that he was sole inventor, and authorized independent counsel to correct or withdraw filings as required. Hartwell paused the acquisition. The safe turn launch was halted, pending safety testing and claim analysis. No one was arrested. A patent dispute, false corporate statements, and unauthorized access required investigation and process. The consequences were serious without pretending a ballroom could become a courtroom. The board asked Naomi to remain temporarily, so engineers and employees would have technical continuity. She looked at me. I did not nod. She faced the board. "I will cooperate with preservation and transition for 30 days. I will not serve as chief technical officer while my own conduct is under review. Appoint an independent engineer." That choice surprised them more than Brent's leave. Simone asked whether Rusk Safety Designs would discuss an interim license if the board corrected inventorship, removed the defective geometry, and protected employee wages during the review. Every face turned toward me. This was the moment Brent had assumed I wanted the old man naming a price after making everyone regret laughing. "I will discuss it," I said, "with independent safety validation, truthful filings, fair royalties, and no role for Brent in decisions involving my patent. Naomi's trust interest will not vote on the negotiation." Naomi absorbed the boundary. I was not using her shares to reward her honesty or punish her failure. Brent's father shouted that I was stealing his son's company. "The board controls the company," I said. "My company controls its patent rights. Those are different facts." Brent tried one last appeal to Naomi. "Come home. We can fight this together." She removed the key to their house from her ring and placed it beside the unsigned certification. "I will communicate through counsel about the company and through a mediator about the marriage. I am not coming home tonight." She did not forgive him. She did not announce a divorce for applause. She reclaimed enough distance to make her next decision her own. As security escorted Brent from the ballroom, he passed my toolbox. For the first time, he did not laugh at it. The acquisition did not close that month. Hartwell's engineers confirmed that the safe turn prototype practiced several claims of my active patent and carried the obsolete notch that caused inconsistent release under low load. Maddox Forge recalled demonstration units before retail shipment. Because no consumer units had been sold, the defect cost money and reputation, not another worker's wrist. The board found that Brent directed the unauthorized scan, removed identifying marks, certified an incomplete patent disclosure, and pressured Naomi to sign a false technical origin certification supporting his sole inventor declaration. He was removed as chief executive for cause. Civil claims followed over fiduciary duties, computer access, and misrepresentation. Patent counsel corrected the application record. Whether every claim would survive, examination remained for the proper process. The company did not disappear. Malik and the engineering team redesigned the release core from the licensed production geometry, eliminating the dangerous delay. Rusk Safety Designs granted a limited interim license after independent testing. The agreement directed part of the initial payment into an employee wage reserve, so machinists and junior engineers did not carry the first cost of Brent's conduct. I did not give away the patent. Mercy toward employees did not require surrendering ownership. Naomi lost money. The suspended deal reduced the value of her shares. and the board found that her delayed reporting had violated her duties as an officer, even though she had not created the false records. She resigned after the 30-day transition and cooperated with every correction. For a while, she blamed me, not for exposing Brent, she said, but for keeping the trust and licensing rights secret. Her anger was justified. We met with the professional trustee and Evelyn in a plain conference room. Naomi learned that Teresa's trust held a future economic interest, but no right to direct my company while I lived. She also learned I had rejected 2 earlier consumer tool offers without telling her. You decided I could not handle knowing. She said, yes. That sounds familiar. The words hurt because they were accurate. I had not stolen her work or isolated her. But I had confused protection with withholding. Brent's abuse of information did not make my silence harmless. I am sorry, I said. I will not rewrite the trust to purchase forgiveness. I will give you the records you are entitled to and answer direct questions. She did not hug me. We scheduled another meeting. That was how repair began, not with a speech, but with calendars, documents, and repeated truth. Naomi moved into a small apartment near the river and filed for legal separation. Brent sent apologies that described him as desperate, visionary, misunderstood, and afraid. None named the choice to enter my garage or remove my mark. She replied once through a mediator, accountability without adjectives. Full financial disclosure. No direct contact for 6 months. Individual counseling before any discussion of reconciliation. Maybe she would divorce him. Maybe she would eventually speak to him in a room with a professional present. She refused to let either possibility become a promise he could manage. My relationship with her remained conditional too. She could visit my garage, but the spare key was returned. If she wanted to examine a prototype, she asked. If I made a business decision affecting the trust's future value, the trustee provided the notice required by the documents. We stopped calling secrecy peace. Lionel died the following spring. At his memorial, his son gave me a small envelope. Inside was a copy of the first witness drawing and a note in Lionel's shaky hand. A good tool keeps the force from returning to the hand that made the mistake. I placed the note in the false tray. The revised safe turn launched 14 months later under a different name. The packaging identified Calvin Rusk as original inventor of the licensed stage release mechanism, and Malik Turner as lead engineer of the redesigned consumer assembly. Naomi's name appeared on 2 housing and test fixture patents she had actually helped create. She insisted on that wording. At the modest launch, there was no spotlight on me. A safety trainer demonstrated the tool at low load. The third click released cleanly. Click, click, click. Naomi stood beside me. Mom would have liked that, she said. She would have asked about the warranty. Naomi laughed, then grew quiet. I used to think giving Brent credit kept our marriage strong. Credit given freely is generosity. Credit taken under pressure is erasure. Do you trust me again? I considered the question instead of protecting her from the answer, more than I did the night of the dinner. Not as much as before you stayed silent. Trust is moving. That is different from finished. She nodded. Fair. Back in my garage, I cleaned the toolbox. I did not remove every patch of rust or hammer out the dent near the handle. Restoration is not the same as pretending an object was never struck. Prototype. 3 returned to its oval in the oilcloth. The black notebook rested beneath it. Teresa's silver drive went into a fireproof cabinet. Because sentiment does not excuse bad storage. On the inside of the lid, I riveted a new brass plate. Calvin Rusk. Original work. Original name. Naomi watched me tighten the final screw. That is louder than you usually are, she said. Some things should be readable. The toolbox had never proved my worth. It preserved a trail, mistakes corrected, names witnessed, and work that could answer for itself when memory became convenient. Brent mocked it because he thought age and rust made ownership disappear. What defeated him was not hidden wealth or a lawyer arriving like magic. It was a chain of ordinary records and a daughter who finally accepted the cost of adding her truth to it. If someone took credit for work that shaped your life, what proof would you preserve? And what boundary would you set with family? Share your answer. And subscribe for more stories about quiet people whose dignity was never as disposable as others assumed.